Hello everyone and welcome to AZ104 Microsoft Azure Administrator training, which will prepare you for official certification exam. My name is Sergio and I will be your instructor for this course. If you decide to get more familiar with Azure Cloud, this training will offer you everything to become familiar with cloud services and pass the certification. As well, this course does not assume a price, all information is completely free and you can come back anytime to continue the study. So let's have a look at what will cover this training and what topics you are going to learn. Actually, everything that is presented in exam AZ104 skill measured. If you write on Google AZ104 exam and click on this page, below you will see a link to all topics and subtopics that you need to know to pass the certification. All this information will be presented in this training. Now let me come back to the presentation to share with you the additional topics and how the content is structured. We'll try to provide you the most important information, starting right from why should you learn Azure, what exactly is needed from your side in order to better understand this course, because you already should be familiar with some technologies which will be mentioned later, as well as some recommendations that will be useful for you during this course and during your preparation to exam if you intend for that. I will do an introduction to Azure to be clear for you what you will learn or what AZ104 covers up and what the purpose is. You probably know that AZ104 is a new version of AZ103. We will stop here a bit to understand what are the differences between AZ104 and 103, what topics were updated and new topics that were introduced in AZ104. Maybe some of you already know about AZ103 and would like to do a small upgrade to 104. As content, this course is split in 5 parts. The first one is Manage Azure Identities and Governance. This part will cover all about Manage Azure AD objects, manage subscription, governance and role-based access control. In the second part, you will learn about how to implement and manage Azure storage services. The deployment of Azure computer resources will be presented in the third part. How to configure and manage Azure Virtual Network, you will get familiar in the fourth part. And the last one, the fifth part, it's about monitor and backup Azure resources. The course is structured in the same way as presented by Microsoft in Skill Measure, and I think it will be much easier for you to learn and track each topic. And of course, at the end of each part, you will have the whole picture for a specific service and how it works. As well, this course will cover more than 50 demos and labs, which will involve certain scenarios. In this way, you will better understand the topics that will be delivered via this presentation. The next parts will be published in the coming weeks, so make sure to subscribe or save the link of this channel to check the upcoming videos. Now, if you have any question, the best way is to ask via the Facebook group. The link as well will be in the description of this video, where you can also find answer to your question or useful links related to AZ104 material. And to have a better motivation to study this course or to study the Azure Cloud solution, I'm coming to you with the first question. Why should you learn AZ104 Microsoft Azure Administrator? I guess each of us have an answer, but at this moment when the cloud technology is growing fast, being an Azure certified engineer, you will have a new opportunity to grow up to the next step in your career. It's not just about money, but it's good to know that you will earn a decent salary once you become a valuable resource. A good example could be the reference below, where you can see the top companies that are hiring for this role. Microsoft, what was to be expected, Nvidia, Wimmer Solution and others. The AZ104 is focused on candidates aspiring to become an Azure administrator, and you can be a student or IT professional that wants to know more about Azure Cloud. In fact, it can be for anyone who has the basic knowledge of the cloud technologies, especially Azure fundamentals. First of all, you need to understand what is a software as a service, platform as a service and infrastructure as a service. These are the basic three models of cloud. and it is good for you to understand the differences and advantages of the various cloud services. This course is coming with some requirements, but to be honest, you can do this without practice before, but it will take much more effort and time to get to the front line. It's about how hungry you are to learn AZ104. Okay, I would like to focus on the tips and recommendation, because over a few pages of this presentation you will see a demo on how to create a subscription. So I would recommend you to start from here to have a subscription. If you already have it, very well. Use Microsoft Azure documentation because it's structured. All the time you will find a clear overview of how to deploy a resource in a portal, PowerShell or Azure CLI. Practice, practice and again practice. In this way you will have more question will lead you to more knowledge. As well, keep note of the important things and read documentation from multiple sources. Again, if you have a question, there is a link to the Facebook group in the description of this video, and you can use it to ask a question, or why not to answer for the people who have questions. At this moment, the AZ104 exam is available in the English language only. The registration fee is 165 USD, but the price is depending on the country where the exam will be done by you. Should be at less. As I promised, we will stop here a bit. The history of AZ104 is long. In fact, who doesn't know yet, the AZ103 exam was replaced by the new version of AZ104 Microsoft Azure Administrator. This change happened at the beginning of 2020. In this slide you can have a look what topics were updated and the most important topics that were added, like custom script extension, Azure Bastion, some stuff in subscription and management groups. We can use role-based access control for storage accounts and others. All these topics will be presented in this training. In other words, we'll include all topics and subtopics that are presented in AZ104 skill measured from Microsoft.com, which I have already presented to you. Well, now somehow you are familiar with what you will learn in this training, so let's make the first step to define what is Azure Cloud. I'm sure most of you already know, but for people who are not familiar yet, Azure is a cloud computing platform that allows you to access and manage cloud services and resources provided by Microsoft. These services and resources include storing your data and transforming it depending on your requirements. To get access to these resources and services, you will need to have an active internet connection and the ability to connect to the Azure portal. So let's get you familiar with the Azure portal. The next demo will be like an overview. We'll not get into details. We will go through some general steps on how to create your subscription. In this way you will get a bonus to your account and spend it during this course to practice the labs. To do this, open a browser, any browser, and access portal.azure.com. Here you have a few options to log in via GitHub or Microsoft account. If you have it, I will choose the option to create a new one. Use your email, password, some info about you. There is a step that you will need and confirmation code that will be sent on your email. Anti-spam check, click next, and you will be redirected to Microsoft Azure page. Here you have three options. First, from left side is for us to create a new subscription. If you try access a resource or create it, this is not possible. First you need to deploy a subscription. So let's go ahead by clicking start to create a new subscription. In the first part you will add some information about you, name, where are you from, phone number and validation of your phone number. Next step is to verify your identity by your card. And yes, I want to mention that you will not be charged now until your bonus is spent. So be careful what resources you use. This part you will better understand once we will go deep in this training. Okay, and the final step is the agreement between you and Microsoft Azure, and that's it, your subscription is deploying. From this point, I will switch to my Azure account, where I will continue to show you the main tabs and the meaning of it. In the upper right corner, you have information about your account. If you click on a 3-point icon, you have your contact information. With this email, you will be informed about important improvements or maybe intervention on data centers where your resources are hosted. A link directly to your billing and invoicing page where you will be able to track your money, including a bonus offered by the Azure. Here you can submit an idea if you have it. You can check your permission for each subscription, but we will come back later to this option. Okay, switch directory. In case if you have more than one subscription, you can select or switch and you will see the resources just for the selected subscription. Okay, what is next? You can send a feedback to the Azure team or open a case for help. You will also find it here, the portal settings, where you can configure the view, flyout or docket menu, theme settings, pop-up notification, and that's it. If you want to change the portal language, use this tab and select your language if it's applicable. Notification when a resource is already deployed, deleted, or an error occurs. The same shortcut to switch subscription. Another shortcut to create a Azure CLI session for your Azure account. Let's move to the left side of the portal. There is a lot of options to create a new resource, and the first one is to click on create a resource. You will be redirected to the Azure Marketplace, and here all resources are grouped according to their purpose. Then click on a resource that you want to deploy, and you'll be redirected to the main page of resource. Select the resource group and add the rest of aspects. But how to deploy a resource, we will do this later in this course. Dashboard page. Here you can have multiple dashboards and you can add whatever you want to view the performance and metrics for your resources. Again, there is a specific topic for dashboard customization. All services page. From here as well you can create a new resource. In the home tab usually you have recent resources that were deployed, some shortcuts, tools, useful links like technical documentation, as well links to Azure mobile application from where you can monitor or take some action on your resources. I would recommend you to create a subscription and start practicing the labs from now. Surf via this portal to become familiar, as well monitor the billing page in case if you deploy the resources and you are not ready to pay after the bonus is consumed. From this point we can start with the first part of this course, Manage Azure Identities and Governance, that will cover topics like Manage Azure AD objects, Manage Role-Based Access Control, and Manage Subscription and Governance, as well a lot of labs that will help you to understand better how Azure is working. So take a coffee and enjoy the session. And we will start with identity governance. 10 years ago, cloud solutions began to grow so fast that right from that moment, it was necessary for many organizations to change the process of governance controls, to monitor the user access, and to reinvent the lifecycle in terms of user management. The identity governance is coming with a new lifecycle that allows you to balance your organization need for security and the employee productivity with the right process and visibility. It provides you capabilities to ensure that the right people have the right access to the right resources. Identity governance gives organizations the ability to do the task across employees, business partners and vendors, and across services and applications both on-premise and in the cloud, such as govern the identity lifecycle, govern access lifecycle, and secure privileged access for administration. Identity lifecycle helps organizations achieve a balance between productivity, for example, how quickly can a person have access to the resource they need, such as when they join the organization, and in security terms, how should their access change over time, such as due to changes to that person's employment status. Access lifecycle. Organizations need a process to manage access beyond that was initially provisioned for a user when that user's identity was created. For more enterprise organizations need to be able to scale efficiently to be able to develop and enforce access policy and controls on an ongoing basis. Privileged access is a key part of identity governance, especially given the potential for misuse associated with those administrator rights that can cause an organization. By employees, vendors, and contractors that take on administrative rights need to be governed. The three life cycles that we have discussed now intend to help organizations address these four key questions. Which users should have access to which resources? What are those users doing with that access? Do you do effective organizational controls for managing access? Can auditors verify that the controls are working? If you have answered to these four questions, you will be able to build a robust lifecycle process for your clients. Okay guys, in the previous slide we have defined the process of user management, but we need a service or application to implement these processes. Somehow in case of Azure it was simpler because Microsoft reinvented the classic Active Directory and has been adjusted to the cloud requirements, and now it's a cloud-based identity and access management service which helps your employees sign in and access resources. If we compare classic Active Directory with Azure Active Directory, Azure AD takes this approach to the next level by providing organizations with an identity as a service solution that can be integrated with cloud and on-premise applications. I will present this service taking into account that you already know something about Active Directory. If not, we'll try to be as explicit as possible. Azure AD has a few versions, and depending on requirements you can choose the version that is best for you. But let's start with the good part. You have also a free version. For example, when you create an account to deploy a subscription, automatically you will have a default Azure AD directory. This version is free with some limits, but in the same time a lot of options like SSO, federated authentication, Azure AD join, password protection, multi-factor authentication, and more. This version is focused more on the clients that have full infrastructure deployed in the cloud and less for the clients that have hybrid infrastructure, and in my opinion this is the correct approach from Microsoft side and somehow stimulates you to migrate all the infrastructure to the cloud. The basic licenses allows you to assign guest users that exist outside of your business. With other words, you can have business to business collaboration capabilities with the basic licenses. So if you switch to the premium license, for example premium 1, it's an enterprise level edition which provides identity management for on-premise users, remote users, and hybrid user accessing application both locally and over the cloud. This edition includes support for self-service identity, access management, administration of dynamic groups including self-service group management, as well as Microsoft Identity Manager, which is a suite of on-premise identity and access management tools. Azure AD Premium 2 include all of the features of Premium 1 plus identity protection and privileged identity management. Identity protection is a management of conditional access to apps and critical data. Okay, when you implement something, that thing has a purpose, and of course Azure AD was developed and intended for specific groups of identities like IT admins, developers, and for their software as a service applications. IT admins control access to your apps and resources based on your business requirements. For example, you can use Azure AD to require multi-factor authentication when accessing important applications. Additionally, you can use Azure AD to automate user provisioning between your existing classic Active Directory and your cloud apps, including Office 365. As an app developer, you can use Azure AD as a standards-based approach for adding single sign-on to your app, allowing it to work with users' pre-existing credentials. Azure AD also provides APIs that can help you to build a personalized app experience using existing organizational data. Basically, this is the fundamental information that you need to know about Azure AD. So I suggest you visit Azure AD pricing page and you can make the difference between licensing version and features. Once you know the features, you can learn additional things that will help you in the future to understand better this service. And now, to add value to the fundamental information that you have right now about Azure AD, let's switch to a demo to familiarize ourselves with this service. The purpose of this demo is to become familiar with Azure AD service. Okay, this is the overview page of Azure Active Directory, and the main information provided to us here, it's about tenant. It's about your role that you have in this directory, license, in my case Azure AD 3 that we already talked about a few minutes ago, tenant ID that is unique in the entire Azure infrastructure, and the primary domain. In the left menu you have all features which we will go through later. Now let's create a new tenant. A new tenant means that we will deploy a new Azure Active Directory without resources and no subscriptions. Click on the top bar of this page, create new tenant, and from beginning you will need to choose the tenant type. First one is Azure Active Directory, the classic version, and the second one is business to customer version, which is intended more for scenarios supporting millions of users and billions of authentication per day. If you are confused about what to choose, you can click on Help Me to choose, and Azure will provide you information for each type. I will choose the classic version and will go ahead. In the description, in the configuration tab, you will need to choose the organization name and initial domain name. By default, a basic domain name on Microsoft.com is included with your directory name. Later, you can add a domain name that your organization already uses. And the last configuration that you need to do for this page is to select the data center where your directory will be deployed. Next, review the information and click Create. The deployment will take a few minutes. You will get a message that tenant creation was successful. Now let me get back and try to switch the directory. The name of the current directory is CloudTech. We'll click on Switch Tenant, then on this button to choose the directory created 5 minutes ago. So we have a new Azure Active Directory with no resources or users presented on it. If I'm trying to check what subscription I have under this tenant, as you can see, I don't have any subscription because this is a blank directory. From Add button, you can create a new subscription, then deploy new resources. Now let me switch back to my directory and continue to familiarize ourselves with the basics about this service. Let's begin with users. This tab you can create new users, you can do bulk operations. Later you will see a demo of how to do these operations. On the left side you can configure self-service password reset and settings related to the accounts. Security groups, which have the same purpose as the classic Active Directory. External identities tab, which will help you to collaborate with external identities. Building roles for your directory. Also you can create a custom role. Administration units, enterprise application to integrate your Azure Active Directory with the top applications. Join devices, identity governance, with which I actually started this presentation. Here you will have the opportunity to deploy and organize the workflow of identities in your organization. Licensing, from here you can activate the premium licensing version to have access to the advanced security features. Once you have activated the desired version, the next step is to assign the license for the identities. Okay, company branding. So this option will permit you to brand your company with custom text and maybe pictures when a user is trying to sign in. Okay, the monitoring part with different tools which will allow you to troubleshoot any problems that may occur with the identities from your directory. Well, now we have a general overview of this service. Let's go ahead with other topics as I presented to you earlier. As in classic Active Directory, every user who needs access to a resource, an account will be needed with the necessary permissions. Typically, Azure AD defines users in three ways. First is a generic user or cloud identity. These users exist only in Azure AD. Examples are administrator account and users that you manage yourself. An hybrid account or directory synchronized identities. These users exist in an on-premise Active Directory. A synchronization activity that occurs via Azure AD Connect brings these users into Azure, but need to mention that their source is Windows Server Active Directory. Guest users that are invited by you to collaborate with your organization. This is a business-to-business collaboration or business-to-customer. These users exist outside Azure. This type of account is useful when external vendors or contractors need access to your Azure resources. Once their help is no longer necessary, you can remove the accounts and all their access. I would like to add something here, not sure that I mentioned in the previous slides. In Azure AD Business to Customer scenarios, the accounts are considered as a consumer user. Business to customer version is intended for commerce and other interactions with customers, citizens, or members of another group that does not require access to internal resources. These accounts are managed in a separate business to customer directory, not in the same Azure AD that you already saw, and they are completely separate from your internal user account. Actually, business to customer accounts have the customer lifecycle. They are also managed by the customer. This means that the accounts are presented in your directory and have access for specific resources, but you can't manage this account. And if the customer will delete the user account, it will be deleted as well from your directory. When you create new users, usually you need to add them to a security group to propagate permission for a specific resource. Azure AD allows you to define two different types of groups. The first one is security groups. These are the most common and are used to manage member and computer access to shared resources for a group of users. For example, you can create a security group for a specific security policy. By doing it in this way, you can give a set of permission to allow the members at once, instead of having to add permission to each member individually. The second group is Office 365. These groups provide collaboration opportunities by giving members access to a shared mailbox, calendar, files, SharePoint site, and more. This option lets you give people outside of your organization access to the group. Also, in this slide, I would like to talk about dynamic membership, which actually is working as a dynamic group, and it's supported for security and Office 365 groups. When a group membership rule is applied, user and device attributes are evaluated for matches with the membership rule. When an attribute changes for user or device, all dynamic groups rules in the organization are processed for membership changes. Users and devices are added or removed if they meet the condition for a group. Security groups can be used for either devices or users, but Office 365 group can be only user groups. Okay, let's switch for demo. First we will need to open Azure Active Directory page. To create a new user, go to the left menu under Manage. You have users. Click Create New User and complete the fields like username, name, first name, last name, password. All leave auto-generated password. Select a security group. Add the location if it's necessary. Job info and click Create. Now let's create a guest user. We were redirected to the same page, but now to invite the user, complete as well the identity fields. Add the message here to figure out what it's all about. Add the group and click Invite. As you can see, in the middle of the UPN, the guest account has an extension, so it will be easy to distinguish them. Let's move to the groups and click Create a new group. Choose the type. I will choose Security. Add the name and description. Select the owners and members of this group. And click Create. Okay, the security group was created, and this is the overview of security groups. Now let's create a new group, a Office 365 group. Here you will need to add the group name and email address. As well, select the owners and members and click Create. To distinguish the groups, it's enough to look at the group type and email. And that's it. Thank you for watching. There are 4 ways to assign resource access right to your users. Direct assignment. The resource owner directly assign the user to the resource. Group assignment. The resource owner assign an Azure AD group to the resource, which automatically gives all of the group members access to the resource. Rule-based assignment. The resource owner creates a group and a user rule to define which users are assigned to a specific resource. It can also be called a dynamic group. And external authority assignment. In this case, access comes from an external source, such as on-premise directory or a software as a service application. In this situation, the resource owner assigns a group to provide access to the resource, and then the external source manages the group members. In Azure AD, you can enable users to create and manage their own security or Microsoft 365 groups, and you have 2 scenarios here: delegated group management and self-service group management. An example of delegated group management is an administrator who is managing access to a software as a service application that the company is using. This kind of management somehow is slow because the administrator asks the business owner to create a new group. The administrator then assigns access to the application to a new group and adds to the group all people already accessing the application. An example of self-service group management is 2 users who both have SharePoint online sites that they set up independently. They are able to create a new group in Azure AD, and when someone wants access, they request it from the access panel, and after approval they get access to both SharePoint online sites automatically. So let's switch to a demo to show you how to assign access rights to a resource. For this demo, we will use a random resource. Click on Identity and Access Management tab. On Role Assignment tab, you will see the users and roles that are already added to this resource. In my case, all the rights are inherited via subscription. And to add a direct assignment, click on Add Role Assignment. Select the role. assign to. In my case, I want to add an user from Azure AD. Select the account and click Save. Wait 2 seconds and the user will appear in this list. As you can see, the scope is this resource, means that the user has been added directly to this resource. To add a group, repeat the same steps and select the group you want. I already mentioned about rule-based assignment. It's about dynamic groups. When you add a group to a specific resource, and the members of that group may differ depending on which query you use. To mention that dynamics groups can be implemented if you have Premium 1 or Premium 2 license activated for your Azure AD. So to enable a dynamic group, in properties of group, change the membership type to dynamic user. Add a dynamic query. I will choose department that is equal with HR value to be added to this group. Click Save, save again, and keep in mind from this moment the existing members will be deleted if they do not meet the query that we just created. So I already added HR values for 3 accounts. So this process took about 10 minutes. As you can see, at this moment it's evaluating the rules and no updates yet. Until now we have 2 users presented in this group, so let's wait until the process will finish. Okay, the update is completed and we have new members in this group. After you add this dynamic group via Identity and Access Management tab, all the members presented in this group will have access to that resources, and numbers may vary from evaluation to evaluation. Hope you liked this demo. Thanks for watching and let's move to the next topic. Azure AD is coming with bulk create update users. For administrators who already support classic Active Directory, when you need to bulk create or update via PowerShell, sometimes it's complicated with formats, some parameters are not applicable in different scenarios. Well, Azure implemented and supports downloading lists of users. Just fill out comma-separated values in CSV template, add your data and re-upload to Azure. The process is pretty simple, so let's see how it works in real life. I already mentioned that user bulk operation will be presented in a separate demo. Again, go to Azure Active Directory, select the user tab from the left side of menu and click bulk activities, then bulk create. Download the CSV template, add your data and fill the fields keeping the same format. I added some actors from US country and will re-upload it by clicking submit. The same steps are referred to invite, delete or download. Just keep in mind that the main column is UPN, user principal name. When you create a new account, the UPN need to be like @ and domain name. That's it. Thanks for watching. Another cool feature is Azure AD self-service password reset. This feature is part of Azure AD and have the capabilities like to allow end user to reset their expired or non-expired passwords without contacting an administrator or help desk for support. We all know that it is a time-consuming process and can be automated using this service. Password writeback allows management of on-premise password and resolution of account lookout through the cloud. Password management activity reports give administrator insight into password reset and registration activity occurring in their organization. Of course, this feature is coming with important benefits like manage cost that reduce IT support costs by enabling users to reset password on their own. It's also reduced the cost of time lost due to lost password and lookouts. As I said, probably some of you already know the experience with password reset and so on. Self-service password reset, it's very intuitive user experience. It provides an intuitive one-time user registration process that allows users to reset password and unblock accounts on demand from any device or location. This service will offer you more security and flexibility to accommodate new security requirements and roll these changes out to user without disrupting their sign-in. You have robust audit logs, including information for each step of the password reset process. The logs also can be imported via API, which will permit you to use a third-party application to interpret the logs. As authentication methods, you can use mobile apps code, notification, mobile phone, and from the moment when you enable self-service password reset for a specific group of users, there are minimum 2 options should be selected. For this demo, we will use Azure Active Directory service. From the left menu, select Password Reset. In Properties, you can enable self-password reset for all users in your Azure AD or for a specific group. Select the target and click Save. Authentication method, as we discussed in the presentation, you need to use minimum 2 options. Select them and click Save. If you enable this option as yes, the user on the next authentication will add information for self-password reset like phone number or security question. If this option is set as no, you need to add manually for each user their phone number and so on. Notification for password reset. Another interesting option here, notify the admins when an admin is resetting his password. If you have a page for your user how to reset the password, you can insert the link here. On-premise integration, for this option is needed a license, premium 1 at least, to enable password write-back, audit logs for troubleshooting, and the last tab, usage and insights. After the self-service password was enabled, the user will be asked to add all information needed as was configured by the administrator. That's it. Thanks for watching. We are moving forward to device identities. This is a beautiful part of Azure AD because with device identity management, you can ensure that your users are accessing your resources from devices that meet your standards for security and compliance. Of course, these standards are defined by you. To manage your device identities using the Azure AD portal, you will need to register or join Azure AD. As an administrator, you can fine-tune the process of registering and joining devices by configuring the device settings. When I'm saying fine-tune, that means you configure what users can join their device in Azure AD and multi-factor authentication when a user wants to add a device to the directory. Well, to add a device in Azure AD, you have a few options. First is Azure AD Registered, that can be added via personal Microsoft account or another local account, and are typically personally owned or mobile devices. Second one is Azure AD Join. You can log in with your device by using an Azure AD account from your organization. For devices that are hybrid Azure AD joined, you can use the domain service account from your on-premise Active Directory. You will see a demo how to join a device to Azure AD, but let's first get familiar with Azure AD Join. I guess if you have installed Windows 10 and no doubt have witnessed how you are supposed to use your Microsoft account for authentication instead of using a local account. Well, Azure AD joined devices are signed in to using an organizational Azure AD account. It doesn't make much sense to use cloud credential to your personal computer because you will not have advanced security options due to licensing type. As I said, this service is addressed more to companies. Access to resources in organization can be further limited based on that Azure AD account and conditional access policy applied to the device identity. Once your device is registered to Azure AD, you can secure and further control the joined devices using mobile device management tools like Microsoft Intune or Endpoint Configuration Manager. These tools provide a means to enforce organized required configuration like requiring storage to be encrypted, password complexity, software installation, and software updates. Below a few examples when to use or where is applicable Azure AD join. If you are interested, you can stop the video to have a look. It is very clear message from Microsoft that this service is useful if you have all the infrastructure in the cloud. As I promised, let's switch on the Azure portal and have a look how to join a device to Azure AD. Let's assume that you install a new Windows 10 device and you have reached the step to set up an account. And of course, many of you already know that you can do this with an organization account. That's what we are going to do to join this device to Azure AD with an Azure AD account. Let me add the account and password. Follow the steps. There is an additional step to add a PIN for your account, but first you need to validate a code via your phone. The phone number that already is added in your Azure AD account, and set up a new PIN. If we go to accounts, as you can see, the credentials are from Azure AD. The second option, if you already have a device with OS installed, simply click add someone else to this PC and follow the same steps that we did before. If we switch to Azure portal on devices tab, the desktop is already presented, and here in device settings you can choose what user may join devices to Azure AD. You can select all or choose a group, maybe 2 users that can do this process. The users that may register their devices with Azure AD. Additional features like use multi-factor authentication to join a device in Azure AD, or number of devices per user. As well, you can encrypt data on the device with BitLocker keys. Here you have a tab with the most common problems that you can meet with Azure AD join option, and the audit logs where you can see the activity related to this service, and that's it. I hope you learned something new from this demo. Thanks for watching, and let's move to the next topic. Okay, we have discussed that self-service password reset can be implemented and in classic Active Directory with password RBAC. Azure AD Connect will help you maintain the sync between cloud and on-premise Active Directory. This service was designed for hybrid scenarios, and the objectives of this tool is to password synchronization of a user's on-premise Active Directory password with Azure AD, password-proof authentication that allow you to use the same password on-premise and in the cloud, federation integration used to configure a hybrid environment using an on-premise Active Directory federation service infrastructure, synchronization when new users, groups, and other objects are created, and health monitoring will report you in case if some objects are not synchronized, and several benefits of Azure AD Connect that will offer you great experience and flexibility, like enhanced security, get alerted on all critical IDFS system issues, easy to deploy and manage, rich usage metrics, and great user experience. Some of you guys may know that before AD Connect was DirSync and AD Sync. Now these two services were replaced by Azure AD Connect, and integrating your on-premise directories with Azure AD makes your user more productive by providing a common identity for accessing both cloud and on-premise resources. And of course, this move will offer you advantages that I already said. So let's switch to a demo how to install and configure Azure AD Connect. To configure Azure AD Connect, choose Azure Active Directory, click on Azure AD Connect tab, and download AD Connect installer. Run the installer, accept agreement, and continue. Choose custom settings, installation of Azure AD Connect, and here the required components that need to be installed. I will leave this default and will install all the required components. After installing the component, you will be asked to select the sign in method. For this demo, I will choose password hash synchronization and will go next to connect to Azure Active Directory. On this step, you will need an Azure account that has a role as global administrator. Then we need to connect to the on-premise Active Directory as well with the main account that is a member of Enterprise Admins. On this page, you will review the UPn's domains presented in on-premise ID and which have been verified in Azure AD. So make sure to add the custom domain in Azure AD and vice versa. Depending on your scenarios, users may not be able to log in with credentials from one infrastructure to another. On this page, you are gonna configure organization unit synchronization. By default, all domains and organization units are synchronized. If there are some organization units you don't want to synchronize to Azure AD, so you can unselect these domains. We'll leave default settings and click next. Here you will need to select how users should be identified in your on-premise directories. For example, to use email attribute or same account name. Next step is to choose what to sync in the cloud based on groups. The best approach of this option is to create a group in on-premise ID and in on-premise Active Directory and add the objects to this group or groups that should be synchronized to Azure AD. And the last tab, optional features, will also add password write-back, which allows to synchronize password that was changed in Azure AD back to on-premise Active Directory. And the last step is to validate your configuration and install it. This will take more than 10 minutes, depending on the amount of objects that need to be synchronized with Azure AD. If we go back to Azure AD, we can see that sync status is enabled and last sync was less than 1 hour. Okay, this was a basic demo on how to install Azure AD Connect. As you can see, I'm not using a production environment to show you all details, but hope this was enough to understand how actually Azure AD Connect can be configured. Thank you for watching and let's move to the next topic. Okay, this topic is about role-based access control, a mechanism that allows you to assign different permissions to your users and more according to their exact needs. To create the predefined permission to control access to your infrastructure can be considered as normal behavior, and of course you don't need to be an expert in Azure Identity and Governance to do these kinds of tasks, or maybe evaluate the existing roles as we did before. The way you control access to resource using role-based access control is to create a role assignment. A role assignment consists of 3 elements: security principal, role definition, and scope. A security principal is an object that represents a user, a group, a service principal, or managed identity that is requesting access to Azure resources. When we say user or groups, we refer to the object in Azure Active Directory. A role definition is a collection of permissions. It's sometimes just called a role. A role is defining the operation that can be performed, such as read, write, delete, and other type of operation. Roles can be high level, like owner, or specific, like virtual machine readers. We already saw in previous demos there are several built-in roles that you can use, like owner, contributor, reader, or user access administrator. Scope is the set of resources that the access applies to. When you assign a role, you can further limit the actions allowed by defining a scope. For example, when you grant access at the parent scope, those permissions are inherited by a child scope. And if you assign the owner role to a user at the management group scope, that user can manage everything in all subscription in that management group. If you assign the contribution role to an application at the resource group scope, it can manage resources of all types in that resource group, but no other resource groups in the subscription. Sometimes the built-in role don't grant the precise level of access you need, and in this case you have an additional option to create a custom role that allows you to define roles that meet the specific needs of your organization. This approach allows you to grant access in more granular way than built-in roles whenever they are needed. Granting permission using custom roles is a two-step process that involves creating a custom role definition and then assigning it using a role assignment. This action can be done from the Azure portal as well from CLI. As an example, you can give read access for specific types of resources. For example, an engineer that will be able to read resources like storage, network, or compute resources. Once you have defined a new custom role in a new directory, in the portal you will see it by the orange icon. So let's switch to the demo in order to see how to assign a role to a resource and to create a new custom role even if you saw it earlier. I'm referring to the classic way to assign a role to a resource. I guess that you already have an Azure subscription and the access control tab is familiar for you. This tab is presented on each subscription, resource group, or resource in Azure. To grant permission using a built-in role, you always will use the access control tab from the left menu of a resource. And here we have the roles already assigned to this resource. Built-in roles is defined in the roles tab, and you can see the number of users that are readers or contributors. To add a new role for this resource, click on Add, select the role, select the type of identities, then select the members and click Save. As you can see, new contributors were added to this resource with different types, one as a user and one as a group. Already mentioned in the presentation that sometimes the built-in roles don't grant the precise level of access you need. For this reason, we will create a new custom role. To do this, click on Add, then Add Custom Role, define the name. In baseline permission, you will need to define the exact permission for this role, and you can define from scratch, upload a JSON file, or clone a built-in role. I will choose to clone the contributor role. In permission tab, you can check what permission are already defined. You can delete or add extra. We'll add 2 extra permission. The scope will leave it default for this demo, even if the scope and permission offered have no tangent. Then you can download the custom role in JSON, remove the custom role and create it. After deployment, the new custom role can be verified in the roles tab and filters by custom role. Now this role can be added as well for this resource in a classic way. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask via Facebook group. The link will be in the description of this video. That's it, thanks for watching. You as Azure Administrator must be able to interpret the access rights that were assigned to a resource. You must figure out if the role assignment to a specific resource was added directly or were inherited. You have a few tabs that will help you to check the access, the tabs from the access control that are already familiar to you. Again, let's switch for demo to become familiar on how to interpret access assignment for some resources. To interpret access assignment for a resource, you will do this as well from the access control tab. And it doesn't matter if you interpret access for a resource group or subscription, the interface will be the same. So let's begin with the Check Access tab, where you can see what roles you have for this resource and scope. If this role was added directly on this resource or was inherited from a resource group, subscription level, or maybe a management group. Next, the Role Assignment tab, which is the main tab where you can check all the users and groups that have access to this resource, and the role assignment for each name. Again, we have the scope level, and we can check if the role was added directly from this resource or is inherited from somewhere above. To add a new role that is inherited from a subscription, go on the subscription level and define a new role and the members. As well, you have a filter here that can help you to interpret the access in the right way. For example, to select the type, role, scope, or group by. In this way, you can identify and interpret all the roles that were assigned to this resource. Roles tab, where you can check how many users, groups, or service principal were assigned per specific role. Deny tab, to block users from performing specific actions, and Classic tab if you are still using Azure Classic deployment. That's it, thanks for watching. Manage multiple directories is referring to the Azure AD organization, and each Azure AD organization or tenant is fully independent. A peer that is logically independent of the other Azure AD organization that you manage. Basically, you have three types of interdependence between organization, resource, administrative, and synchronization independence. Resource independence is referred to as the exact Azure AD resource, and when you create or delete it, it has no impact on any resource in our organization that you have, except for external users, which we already talked about in this training. Administrative independence, for example, when you add or remove an administrator role from one directory, this has no impact on any administration privileges in any other directory. And the last one, synchronization independence, you can configure each directory independently to extend your on-premise identity infrastructure with this directory and get data synchronized. I would like to point out one more time that you can have one or more Azure AD directories and subscription under each directory. An Azure subscription has a trust relationship with Azure Active Directory, and the subscription trusts Azure AD to authenticate users, services, and devices. Multiple subscriptions can trust the same Azure AD directory, and each subscription can only trust a single directory. This means that you cannot have one subscription into two directories at the same time, of course. The next topics will be about how to manage subscription and governance, and in this slide you will become familiar with Azure policy. I'm sure you have encountered different situations when someone does not follow the company's procedures, for example, to create a new VM or install a new physical server on on-premise infrastructure. Skipping some configuration leads to the situation that the new device is not in compliance with the entire environment. Well, in cloud you have Azure policy that can help you to avoid these kinds of situation, to enforce organizational standards, and to assess compliance at scale. Through its compliance dashboard, it provides an aggregated view to evaluate the overall state of the cloud environment, with the ability to drill down to the resource level and policy granularity. It also helps to bring your resources to compliance through bug remediation for existing resources and automatic remediation for new resources. Azure already has a couple of built-in policies, but you can also create your custom policies. If you want to implement this in your environment, you need to understand the features like policy definition that has condition under which is enforced, and it has a defined effect that takes place if the conditions are met. Policy assignment is a policy definition that has been assigned to take place within a specific scope. This can be a management group, subscription, resource group, or even a particular resource. Policy parameters. When creating a policy definition to make it more generic, then you can reuse that policy definition for different scenarios. Initiative definition is a collection of policy definitions that are used for a singular overarching goal. Initiative assignment is an initiative definition assigned to a specific scope, and initiative parameters, similar to policy parameters, that help you simplify initiative management by reducing redundancy. Azure Policy uses a JSON format for form the logic evaluation used to determine if a resource is compliant or not. An example is on the right corner on this slide. Definition include metadata and policy rule. The defined rule can use function, parameters, logical operators, conditions, and property aliases to match exactly the scenarios you want. As an administrator, you may need to lock a resource to prevent other users in your organization from accidentally deleting or modifying critical settings. You can set the lock level to cannot delete or read only. In the portal, the locks are called delete or read only. Delete means authorized user can still read and modify a resource, but they cannot delete the resource. Read only means authorized users can read a resource, but they cannot delete or update the resource. Applying this lock is similar to restricting all authorized users to the permission granted by the reader role. When you apply a lock at the parent scope, all resources within that scope inherit the same lock, and the resources you add later will inherit the lock from the parent. Resource lock don't restrict how resources perform their own functions. Just resource changes are restricted, but resource operations are not restricted. For example, a read-only lock on the SQL database prevents you from deleting or modifying the database. If it doesn't prevent you from creating, updating, or deleting data in the database. So keep in mind these things. Below a list of considerations before applying locks to resources. For example, for storage accounts, if you apply a read-only lock, will prevent all users from listing the keys or resource group. That as well will prevent all users from starting or restarting the virtual machine. So before applying the locks, consult the Azure documentation. Now it's time for a demo. To configure resource lock, first click on that resource, then in settings on the left menu click on locks tab. Click on add the lock name, select the lock type and click OK. If you want a view of all resources that were locked from the same resource group, click on resource group, respectively all resources locked at subscription level. To change the lock type, click on edit and do the change, then click OK. Here I would remind you one more time to take into account the considerations that were mentioned in the presentation before applying locks to resources. That's it, thanks for watching. Resource tag will help you classify cloud resources in a different ways. On Azure, each tag is created using a key and a value. Then tags are attached to a resource. Tags are not just used only to understand what you are spending on cloud services, but also apply policy or automate some tasks to optimize workload in your environment. Also, I want to mention here, if you already have some tags convention in your infrastructure, not in the cloud, consider that your cloud naming convention should align with them. Otherwise, you should establish separate cloud-based standards. And below you have some suggestions how to use the tag convention. There are a lot of tag convention which can be taken into account depending on what infrastructure you have, depending on how many environments are in that infrastructure and other aspects. Also, the tags can be changed over time through a simple automation process in case if the current tags does not meet your expectations. To view the tags for a resource, go to an overview tab for that resource. If a tag was applied in the past, for this resource, then the tag will be presented here. To add a new tag for this resource, click on Tags tab from the left menu, then add additional tags for this resource. You already know that when a new resource is deployed, you can add the tags from the beginning before deploying. Also, to check all the tags from your infrastructure, you can search by tags, and in results, all the tags will be listed. That's it, thanks for watching. In Azure, there are three types of logical collection of resources: management groups that help you manage access, policy, and compliance for multiple subscriptions. We will talk about this later. Subscription, that as well is considered as a logical collection, and the last one is resource group, which is a fundamental element of the Azure platform. A resource group is a logical container for resources deployed on Azure. These resources are virtual machine, application gateway, storage account, SQL databases, Cosmos DB instances, and more. All resources must be in a resource group, and the resource can only be a member of a single resource group. After a resource has been deployed in a resource group, you have the option to move it in another resource group. You decide how you want to allocate resources to resource groups based on what makes the most sense for your organization. For example, if you have an application that requires different resources that need to be updated together, such as having a SQL database, a web application, or mobile apps, then it makes sense to group these resources in the same resource group. Also, is fitting very well when we talk about permissions. You can grant user access at the resource group level. Groups make this simpler to manage and provide greater visibility. Also, you can control the cost per group. Somehow it gives you a flexibility in many ways. To understand better what I'm talking about, let's switch to Azure portal for a demo. I already mentioned in the presentation that a resource group is a logical collection of resources. And to visualize the resources inside of the resource group, use the short link from the left menu that will redirect you to all groups. Click on one of the groups to see all resources. Basically, you have many ways to create a resource group. You can create it before deploying a resource or during the process of deploying. Let's try to create a resource group. Click on Add button, select the subscription and add the name of your resource group. Select the data center, in my case will be ES2US, and click Next. Add the tags if it's applicable, review the configuration and click Create. The deployment will take a few seconds. After that, you can create a new resource inside of this resource group. As you can see in the left menu, after you will logically group your resources, you can do cost management for all resources inside of this group. You can monitor and you can add the policy to check if the resources are in compliance with your infrastructure. If I choose another group, a group with resources that are already created, I can see the deployment status for each resource. For any question, don't hesitate to ask via Facebook group. The link will be in the description of this video. That's it, thanks for watching. Okay, next slide. We already have spoken in this tutorial about subscription, and you know that an Azure subscription can be used to separate Azure environments by financial and administration logic. This can be done in many ways, and you can design it to fit your needs. One example would be to have a single tenant at the company level and an Azure subscription for each department. In this way, you can assign a different administrator to each subscription department and keep track of how much each department is involving and spending at the same time. Another example for subscription separation would be to have different stage environments. The subscription is under the tenant, and you can have multiple Azure subscriptions under a single tenant. Creating a new tenant will result in only an Azure Active Directory without subscription. This happened when we first created an account in Azure Portal. Behind these steps, a new default directory has been deployed, and the second step was to create a new subscription. When you create an Azure subscription, you make several key choices about the subscription: who is responsible for paying for the subscription, and which Azure offer I am interested in. The party associated with the email address that you provide when you create a subscription is responsible for paying for all costs that are incurred by the subscription's resources. And offer, you can choose the Azure offer that best meets your needs. For example, if you intend to use a subscription to run non-production workloads, you may choose the pay-as-you-go offer and pay just for what you use. For example, I'm using pay-as-you-go for this demo. Azure defines three types of roles for administrating subscription: classic subscription administrator roles, Azure role-based access control, and Azure Active Directory administrator roles. The account administrator role for an Azure subscription is assigned to the email account that is used to create the Azure subscription, and it's the billing owner of the subscription. Basically, multiple subscriptions are managed in the same way as directory. If you have many subscriptions, you can filter to see the resources for the selected filter. So let's switch to Azure Portal, where you can see the way of how we behave when we have multiple subscriptions. We already know that subscription can be used to separate Azure environments by financial and administration logic, and you can have more than one subscription under your root account. Now let's assume that you already have a subscription and decided to add a new one. To see all your subscriptions, you can search here on top or click directly on shortcut access. As I said, to add a new subscription, you can use add button from here, and you'll be redirected to select the offer. For example, here we have most popular, and if you want to learn more details like limits and benefits for each offer, just click on this link and you'll be redirected to that information. And if I would like to add a new subscription, in my case pay-as-you-go offer, we'll click select offer, and again we'll be redirected to another page to identify the account, to add payment information. So if you have multiple subscription, you can use different bank cards to pay for each subscription. Below technical support and agreement between you and Azure. We'll not go through all these steps because we already did this from the beginning. We'll come back to the subscriptions page, and here we have a filter from where you can select the role you have for each subscription, and in the right side the subscription status. Below a checkbox where we can activate or deactivate the global subscription filter. Global filter can be found right here on the top right. If I'm selecting the pay-as-you-go, the subscription will be added here in this page. Now let's check on this subscription. This is what a subscription looks like after it is created. On the overview tab, you will see information like offer, currency, status, last billed amount. On the right menu, we have cost management to analyze and set the budget for the current subscription, billing compartment, resource deployed in this subscription, or request quota increase because each subscription is limited to the size of resource or resource limit. For example, deploy a VM with maximum 10 virtual CPU. In time we will have other opportunities to configure certain aspects on the subscription. For this demo I consider to be enough. Thanks for watching, and let's move to the next topic. Well, cloud technologies have been very popular in the last 5 years. The first thing that scares us is the price to maintain a subscription, but in many scenarios it depends on what you need. Azure Cloud, and not just Azure, develop tools that can help you to manage the cost, as well to suggest you to optimize the environment in terms of cost. In Azure, cost management is the process of efficiently planning and controlling cost involved in your business. Usually cost management tasks are normally performed by finance, management, and the application teams. You may not have access to this part of the cloud, but it's good to know that cost management will help you with plan and analyze cost efficiently and take action to optimize cloud spending. You can use APIs for export automation to integrate cost data with external systems and processes. There are a few tools that can help you in the cost management process. For example, Azure Pricing Calculator, used to estimate your upfront cloud cost. I'm sure you already checked this tool. Azure Migrate will help you evaluate your current data center workload and estimate cost if you want to move your current infrastructure to the cloud. Azure Advisor, that has the ability to identify and use resources like VMs and take the necessary actions. Azure Hybrid Benefit, that use your current on-premise Windows Server or SQL Server licenses for VMs in Azure, and you don't need to pay extra for the licenses. Earlier I said that you as Azure Administrator will not be involved in this part, cost management, but if you are, you need to understand some stuff like get an intuitive view of Azure cost, understand invoice cost to be able to handle the data and take the actions. Okay guys, management groups are containers that help you manage access, policy and compliance if you have multiple subscriptions. These groups are created inside of Azure AD Directory or tenant. It is the same thing and lets you assume that you support a company that has multiple departments, and in many cases it is recommended to separate the department per subscription, or of course if they are big, or maybe split the environments like production, test and development. This categorization is often designed to support workloads that are likely to consume most of the resource limits of a subscription, or separate mission critical workloads to ensure that they are not competing with other workloads under these limits. Also to apply policy to management groups that limit the operation, for example to create storage accounts in the central US location. As you can see in this example, there is a hierarchy of management groups on the subscription. You can have another management group in a group and subscriptions in a group. All subscriptions within a management group automatically inherit the conditions applied to the management group. It is important to mention that a management group tree can support up to 6 levels of depth except the root management group level, but is not considered in this case. So this root management group allows for global policies and Azure role assignment to be applied at the directory level, and it's built into the hierarchy to have all management groups and subscription fold up to it. The hierarchy can be modified anytime, for example to move one subscription from group 1 to group 2. You can also use role-based access control to add permission to a group, and this permission will be inherited down to the resources. How to work with management groups you will see in the next demo. Before creating a new management group, go to Azure AD and click on Properties. Make sure that this option Access Management for Azure Resources is on Yes. and click Save. In this way, you will elevate access to manage all Azure subscription and management groups from this directory. Okay, now we can go to management groups. As you can see, I already have a few groups here divided by departments, and if I click on one management group, you may have other groups and subscriptions. If you remember, we can have 6 level of depth except the root management group level. To check the management group overview, click on details, and on the left you will have activity logs, access control tab. From here you can add roles that will be inherited by the subscriptions under this management group. Cost management tab, you can set up a budget for a specific department and so on. Now let's try to create a new management group by clicking the add management group, add management group ID. Pay attention because this ID cannot be updated after creation, and display name, and click Save. It will take a few seconds to deploy a new group. After deployment, go to details and you will see and you'll be redirected to the overview of this group. Again, the same menu from where you can control your group in terms of security and cost management. That's it. Hope this was useful and thanks for watching. Well, this is the end of the first part of this training. I would like to recap what you have learned until now. Basically, you have become familiar with Azure Identity Governance. We have discussed Azure Active Directory, what benefits has this service, licensing, work with Azure AD objects like users and security groups. You have learned about Azure policy, role-based access control, cost management control, how to manage subscription and management groups. Again, if you have any question related to this part, the best way is to ask a question in a Facebook group. The link will be in description of this video. The second part of this training is about implement and manage storage. The link as well can be found in the description of this video, but will be placed in the coming weeks. So don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Hope you like this part and I'm waiting for you in the next session. Thanks for watching.